Today I will paint a watercolor painting of a bird. For this project, I'm using watercolor paper, a pencil, and watercolor paint. I'm going to begin by making a very basic outline of a bird, in this case, a duck. And I want to try to make it so that it really fills up the space of my paper. So I'm going to make the back of the duck's tail go almost to the edge. You see the bottom of the duck is not too far from the bottom of the paper. This will be the top of the duck's back, so it has a slight curve to it. And then I want the head to be pretty close to the front of my paper. So I'm gonna really lightly draw a circle for about where I want the head to be. I'll add a beak to the front of that, and it'll go kind of towards the edge of the paper here. I don't want to be so close to the edge that my pencil's like touching. I want to leave a little bit of space, but I definitely want to use up a good majority of the space on my paper. I'm going to curve the head around and connect it to the rest of the body like so. And then I'm going to add a little bit of detail on the inside of my duck as well, maybe to kind of show that there are feathers here, the wings of the duck that are folded back because the duck is in water. So I'll just add a couple of those details. Again, I'm really trying to keep it simple. I don't want to sit there and draw every last feather. I'm going to make the little collar on the duck. I want this to be a mallard, and I'm going to give the duck an eye. So again, a very basic drawing. I'm really trying to keep it simple with just an outline. If you don't trust your drawing skills, you can always find like a coloring sheet, and that works really well for this too. Once I have the basic outline of my duck, I want to give it a little bit of surrounding. So I'm gonna maybe try to think about what I want around my duck. Again, I wanna keep this pretty simple too. So I'm kind of finishing up. I'm adding little details on my duck to make it look nice. And then I'm gonna try to think about what I want next to go around the outside of my duck. What I've decided is I want it to make, of course, look like the duck is swimming. So I'm going to use just a couple of wavy lines down here at the bottom to kind of make it look like the ripples in the water as the duck is going by. Again, I don't want to add too many because I don't want it to get too complicated, but a couple of wavy lines just to add movement will make this really work. I also want to feel like there's a little bit of land nearby. Maybe it's going by some tall grass. So I'll go ahead and make some lines behind my duck here to make it look like there's some grass growing right behind the duck and it's just kind of swimming by the shore. So I'm just making some tall points and filling some of those in between too to make it look like grass. I think I'll add one more right here. And I'm kind of liking how that's looking. I don't want to do grass all the way across, so I think I'll just kind of add a line here that maybe looks like land. All right, I think I'm liking this overall. At this point, I'm going to start drawing some lines that cross through my entire paper. You can do them sideways, you can do them up and down, you can do them diagonal, but as you draw them, they should actually go through any other lines that you have. So you can see I'm drawing right through the grass. I'll draw right through the duck as I do this so that everything has a line through it. And I'm not doing tons of them, but I'm doing enough that it kind of fills up the page with these interesting lines. Maybe I'll even add one that kind of comes down like this and crosses over one of my other lines. So your lines can even like overlap a little bit, and that is okay too. So it looks like I have about 6, 7 lines. Depending on the size of your paper, you can kind of change that up. All right, at this point, I'm ready to paint. Now, you can use realistic colors or you can have fun with your colors. It really doesn't matter. But my goal is to create a flat wash in each shape that I made with my pencil lines. Now, what is a flat wash? Well, basically, it's just kind of a very light filling of watercolor in each shape. So I don't want to see too many brush strokes. I don't want it to be overly saturated at this point, but just kind of fill the space with color. And notice that my entire space is wet when I do that. If you go in with too dry of a brush, your color will dry before you fill up the shape, and that will leave brush strokes. So I'm trying to fill the shape while the watercolor is still wet. And I'm starting with one color, in this case, kind of a blue, and I'm going to jump around my painting. So notice that I started with one shape, and then instead of doing one right next to it, I jumped to one that's actually not touching it because I want to use different colors in each shape so that no two shapes that touch are the same color. So it's kind of like a puzzle where I'm trying to find pieces that don't touch each other and paint them in. So in this case, I'm starting with blue for the sky, and I'm using kind of this medium shade of blue, and I'm filling in whatever shapes I can as long as they don't touch each other with this blue. And you'll notice I'm using a round brush because it has a nice point to it so that I can get into some of those tighter spaces. If you're working on a bigger paper, and maybe you have a bigger space to fill in, you may want to use like a flat brush just to get more paint on your paper more quickly. But because I'm working on such a small paper, I have a small round brush, and that's working well to fill in each part of my picture. Now that I have another shape painted in, I'm going to jump around to see what other areas I can find that are not touching the ones that I've already painted. Another reason why we don't want them to touch is because when you put watercolor right next to a shape that is wet, the colors will bleed together. So a lot of this picture will basically be jumping around the picture to make sure that the watercolor is not bleeding into each other. All right, you can see that once I did my first blue, now I'm going in with a darker variation, and I am filling in some of the areas between. Again, because it's a different shade of blue, it works so that it's not going to be the same as any of the shapes that are right next to it. So I started with the water, and now I'm working up into the sky again, and we'll continue to add this color until I have filled in all of the shapes that I can using this technique. Now, it is okay if the shapes touch maybe like on the corners. I don't mind that as much, but I'm just trying to avoid them sharing an edge or like a complete side to the shape. Thought it might be nice to fill in some of these spots in here between the grass, so I can fill those in with this lighter blue. You can see it's definitely different than the other blue that I have already on there. That one's more of a cool blue, where this one is a little bit brighter. And I'm just taking my time and filling in each of these spots. And because there's grass in between them, none of them will touch, so it's okay if I do them all the same color. I'm also going to fill this big spot here behind the duck. So I'll just continue going around my painting, filling in any openings that work so that they don't have any of the same colors touching each other. All right, you can see that I've added more, including some green now, and I'm really trying to build up some of my darker values. To do that, I'm using a little bit more paint, really trying to make sure my paint is really thick on my brush, and this kind of makes my picture a little bit more dynamic, having lighter values, medium values, and darker values. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in some of these next to my duck, hoping that it makes my duck stand out just a little bit more. So you definitely can have fun with using a variety of the same color just by making it darker. Now, if you did do two shapes right next to each other, the same color, if I made them both medium blue, don't fret. You can always go back over one of them with another coat of paint, and that will actually make it darker too. So that's totally an option. You can just add a darker value to a color if you did do two of the same right next to each other. I'm going to continue filling up my water down here with the dark blue. You can also consider leaving some white as one color too. So maybe I wanted to leave some of these ripples in the water white to kind of show some reflections or highlights. I totally could have done that as well on this picture. So don't be afraid to use white as one of your colors. So I am just about finished with my duck, and I'm adding an eyeball here so that I can call it complete. And it now is a finished flat wash watercolor bird painting. So I hope you enjoyed this technique. I think it's kind of a fun way to put a spin on watercolor painting and to practice getting those nice smooth flat washes. For more fun tutorials, please head on over to my channel at Elke Art, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching.